because no man is an island. While, yes, you have to fight for your own worth and your own value, you also then have to be very, very picky on what I call the army that you encircle yourself with, who the people who you decide to share those feelings with, that you decide to share those insecurities with, because not everybody who is in your circle is in your corner.
Welcome to the Generation Youth Podcast. I'm your host, James McLamb. I'm here with a new friend, Kate Garnes. Kate, how are you doing today?
I'm so good. I'm so excited. I've been looking forward to this.
I have been looking forward to this since then. I told you before we hit record that my notes from when you and I first met had all these stars and these lady rocks. This is really cool. And it's like, I can't wait to do this. So I'm excited.
Yay, me too.
Because if I remember correctly, it was like a 30-minute scheduled call that went almost 2 hours. And I'm like, that doesn't happen very often. So we may get 2 episodes out of this. Who knows what's going on with this? So,
I love it.
well, before we jump into what we see as a major issue that our young people are facing and how you see some solutions for that, our audience would love to learn a little bit more about you. And they get tired of hearing my voice all the time. I don't know why this sophisticated Southern accent bores them, but they do. So if you wouldn't mind, take a couple of minutes and introduce yourselves to the Generation Youth audience.
Well, hi, everybody. My name is Kate Garnes. I am originally from the great state of Missouri, but I now call Atlanta, Georgia home. I have done a lot of really crazy, strange things with my life. I got my degree in music education and then decided I don't want to be a music teacher. That's crazy. So then I went and moved on a whim down to Orlando, Florida, and ended up living there for almost 13 years and was a performer for Walt Disney World, Universal Studios Orlando, SeaWorld, a lot of the big theme parks down there. And then I also learned and became a DJ, which is wild and random. But while I was in the middle of all of this, I just felt this tug on my heart that there was something more. I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know what that looked like until I went to my 10-year high school reunion as a 28-year-old single female, not married, not with kids. And I felt like I had failed because in Missouri, that's kind of what you're taught. At least that's what I was taught was taught is a big word. You subconsciously are taught. It's not actually taught to you that you go to high school, you go to college, you get married, you have 2 kids and you become a nurse or a teacher. And I was 28 and I was playing dress up for a living. And it was crazy. And I felt like I had failed. And that was when I found what I call God. Some people call the universe, some people call energy. I call God, told me you want to be a motivational speaker. And I threw myself into it, quite literally. Anything I could get my hands on, books, podcasts, videos, anything. That was in late 2016. And by 2018, I was a paid speaker. In 2019, I was a full-time speaker working with youth. And then the pandemic hit. And everything came to a grinding halt. And so we've just been rebuilding since then. I have since moved from Orlando to Atlanta. My husband is a film and television actor. And so we had to move here for his job so that he could be closer to the big film industry. And I was already living my dream of being a speaker and a DJ. So I wanted him to chase his dream. And that's kind of how we ended up here. That's Kate's story in a nutshell. You're welcome, everybody.
Well, you said play dress up. You know, some of our audience is going to be, what is she talking about? Play dress up. Tell them what that means, because that's a cool part of your story.
So I will use the politically correct term. In working with Disney, I was very good friends with Mickey and Minnie Mouse. I brought to life about 40 different characters in my time with Disney. I was fortunate enough to do a few commercial shoots. I was one of a few people that was trained to do live filmings. I really, really loved my job. I mostly did, by the end of my time with Disney, in my 10 years with Disney, I mostly did shows and parades, mostly shows. But so, and then at Universal Studios, I was a 7th year Gryffindor prefect in the wizarding world of Harry Potter, where I did the Frog Choir show. So I've been really lucky, but I literally got paid to play dress up, to play other characters. So
wow. Yeah. Now, when we were talking before, and you talked about your desire, your purpose in life of speaking with youth, one of the things that came up that I had written down that we discussed was that you really like helping youth find their worth and their value.
Yeah.
That spoke to me a lot because I can see that as a problem. But why did you see that as a problem, or how did you see that being manifested upon you?
Oh, what a great question. Well, it started because I was once a youth. I was once one of the youth. I'm
I was
36
too, but that was a long time ago. So,
and I saw, as I've gotten older, I saw the draw for just wanting to fit in
mhm.
myself. That all I wanted in high school, I just wanted to get invited. I didn't even need to be like in the cool group. I wanted to get invited to the Friday night hang. I wanted to get invited to go to the movies. I wanted to be invited. And I wasn't. I mean, I was by my little group of friends, and I loved my group of friends. But there were other groups that, man, I just wanted to be invited. And it read to me as, well, I'm not cool enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not thin enough. I'm not whatever. Insert thing here. And then I had a dad who, long story short, my dad was a heavy alcoholic. And so I was getting told that I was a disappointment. I was getting told that
Mm.
I didn't matter, that I wasn't good enough. I was being told by some of my dance teachers that I wasn't good enough. And those recordings played over and over and over. And it manifested into how I lived my life and how I saw myself. And I am seeing that exact same recording in teens now, except now it's amplified. Because when I was in high school, it was early 2000s. We didn't have social media. We didn't have smartphones. We didn't have cameras in our back pockets. We had cell phones, but it was like a Nokia cell phone where you played Snake. It was like, I didn't even have texting.
I forgot about Snake until
Oh,
you said
you
that.
are welcome. I was very good at Snake, but I didn't even have texting until I was in college. So now, and I'm not saying that to be like, oh, life was so hard for me. It's not like that. I'm so grateful I didn't have that, because now everything is amplified. Everything is
Mhm.
instant and everything is amplified. And so all of these teens who are just trying to figure out who they are, they're just trying to feel comfortable in their own bodies. They're trying to feel comfortable in their surroundings. And they are being told constantly by this incredible thing in our back pocket. Well, this is how you have to look cool. This is how you have to be. This is why you're not good enough. Here's this person who's doing things so much better than you, and all this stuff, that they're not getting a chance to really fall in love with who they are on their own. So, the reason I'm so passionate about speaking to teenagers and helping them, how do you find your worth and your value and your voice? And how do you find all those things when no one shows up to save you? When no one shows up to tell you, hey, you matter. Hey,
Mhm.
my life is better because you're in it. Hey, you did a really good job at this thing. When teens aren't having someone show up for them, how do you show up for yourself? And it's hard. It's not, I'm, when I speak, I'm very, very honest about, I am not what you would call a toxic positivity speaker. I'm a very, very happy person, but I'm going to tell you what's real. I'm going to tell you that fighting for your own worth is really difficult, and it's going to take
Mhm.
work, and it's going to take practice, and you're going to fail at it a whole bunch of times before you're successful. But once you are, it gets a little bit easier. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, when we were talking about how it's been amplified, it led me down a trail in my head about how, my generation, the way that we compared ourselves was going to the store, buying a magazine, and looking at those. And
Yeah.
then I got to thinking about, well, what about my parents' generation? How did they do that? Well, it was not as much magazine and television. That was just budding when they were coming along. So there was some of that. But it was more the person in the neighborhood who maybe was the success that they could
Keeping
aspire
up
to.
with the
So
Joneses.
yeah, exactly. Or, this person has done all this. Why can't I do that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
But when there's only one person in the neighborhood, then it jumps to, oh, look at all these celebrities here. To now, it's not just celebrities, it's everybody
Yeah.
looks like they're perfect but
Yeah.
me.
And people don't
So,
realize that what you're seeing on social media is everyone's highlight reel. We
yes.
don't show the bloopers. We don't show the post-credit scenes. We don't show any of that, because that is shows it doesn't, but it's read as weakness, and it's read as fault and
Hmm.
shame. So we're comparing ourselves to, like, I struggle with this too. I will see speakers who are killing it, looks like they're getting booked all the time, and they're always traveling, and they have these crazy, really good social media platforms, and they've got these amazing videos. And I'm like, man, like, I haven't spoken in a while. What am I doing wrong? It has nothing to do with me. It has nothing
Yeah.
to do with me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's the accessibility of being able to see there's something wrong with me because I'm not like that
Yeah.
is just, as you said, has been amplified.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've said over time that relate to this is that youth are only responding to the world that we created for them. We gave them this world thinking it was going to be so amazing without ourselves understanding all the pitfalls, all the dangers, obstacles, all those negative things that can happen to them. And now that we're starting to realize this, we're trying to play catch up to a group that's being drugged further and further down the hole.
Right.
Where previous generations, it was a more of a slow transition. Now we've given them this fast transition world. They're not dealing with any different problems.
Correct. Correct.
No different problems.
Correct.
But it's just manifesting itself differently.
Yeah.
You talked about this global thing that happened in 2020 that I guess I didn't know it happened in other places. I thought it was just here in Raleigh, North Carolina, but apparently it was everywhere. When that happened, and we were at my daughter was home, my youngest daughter was home, and she was 10 at the time, and we were able to watch television together in the morning. She would get up at her normal time. I'm like, why are you getting up at normal time? You don't have to go to school. But she would get up at normal time, so we'd watch morning television. And Leave It to Beaver was on. Do you know what Leave It to Beaver is?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 1957 to 62. I've seen every episode with her at least 17,000 times.
Cleavers? Was that their
The
name?
Cleavers, right. Yeah. And it was during this time I was also writing and preparing for the first book launch, and we were talking about the big issues being self-image, relationships, and goals, and purpose in life. Almost every episode, the writers were doing with these two boys that were in elementary school, middle school, and then all the way up to high school was about, how do I feel about myself? I must be a failure. I'm not measuring up. I'm not as good as this person. I'm not as good as my brother. Or who are my friends? They're the wrong things. I'm doing things wrong. How do I relate to my parents? How do I relate to these sources? Or what do I need to be? How am I going to be the things they're doing? Those were things that their sitcom writers were writing in the late 50s.
Yep.
Same issues, totally different way it's manifested.
Yep.
So what are you doing? How do we help them? How do we help this generation overcome this stuff? Because they're not going to have the same solution. The same solutions that help Wally and Beaver Cleaver are not going to help them today.
That's kind of the $1 million question, isn't it? That is, if any of us could come up with the exact right answer to that, I think we would be quadrillion-millionaires. So we show them grace. First of all, we show them grace. And I think we also have to show their parents some grace, because in a lot of the research I have done and a lot of the conversations that I have had with teens after my talk, a lot of it comes back to their parents and things their parents have said, ways their parents have acted. And here's what's really hard is that's my generation. My generation is their parents. And so that is a tough pill for me to swallow. Is like, oh man, like us millennials, dang, like some of us really dropped the ball. However, the way we help them, in my opinion, is we do what we can and we do the best that we can until we know better, and then we do better. That's Maya Angelou quote, something like that. So what I do is I use my story. I use my story of being told I wasn't good enough. Because when I became a speaker, I was literally like, why is anyone going to want to listen to me? I'm a lower middle class white girl from Missouri. I've never had cancer. I've never fought a shark. I've never been on reality television. I'm not a pro athlete. I'm not an Olympian. I have all of my appendages. And somebody said, well, Kate, that's why you're everyman. People can relate to you because you haven't climbed Mount Everest. Like, you struggled with math in high school. You have always been small compared to people your age. Like, I'm only 5 foot. So I use my story of being told I wasn't good enough, being told that I wouldn't make it, being told that I would never amount to anything, to how I learned to fight for myself, how I got my job at Disney by fighting for my own voice, how I fought through toxic friendships and toxic relationships and picked myself up, not because anybody saved me, but because I knew that I had to make the choice of, okay, I'm either going to lay in this bed until I die, or I'm going to get up and I'm going to find just one thing to find joy in. My goal, when I had hit the lowest place in my life, and I talk about this in my talk, my goal was not to stay alive. My goal was not to keep breathing. My goal was to find one tiny thing to find joy in. Because if I could find one teeny tiny thing to find a little bit of joy in, maybe there was one teeny tiny reason why I was worthy of joy. And I found so much joy in a double chocolate muffin with chocolate chips. That was that chocolate muffin saved my life, because that made me achieve my goal. So I break it down for students of, I'm not going to give you the answers on how to have the perfect life. I'm not going to give you all of the answers on how to save the world. I'm going to give you the tools that I used that saved me. And maybe it won't work for you, but finding how I spoke to myself. How am I speaking to myself? Because the way we speak to ourselves here, we would never say to other people. Like, we call ourselves names and we say these hateful, heinous, ugly things to ourselves that if we said out loud to anyone else, we would be canceled immediately. So we have to start with this, because this affects this. And by this, I'm pointing to my brain, affects what I say, affects what I attract in the world that I create around me. Because people who are happy people don't tend to be and stay around people who are always negative, who are always name calling people, who are making fun of others. I don't want to be around people like that. And I think I'm a pretty happy person. I gravitate toward people who find joy. I gravitate toward people who are real, who are honest, who are kind. I gravitate big toward kindness because this world.
That's a choice that you've made.
Yes.
That I find sometimes a lot of our young people today, a lot of the teens that we're dealing with today, don't seem to have, I don't want to say the ability, but maybe the motivation to make that choice.
Yeah.
Because your story that you talked about being, smaller than folks and maybe not worth this stuff, that related to me. It sounded a lot like me when I entered high school. I remember making a conscious decision. What groups do I want to be involved with in this school? It's going to be harder to be in that group, but they look like the fun group that's going to do things. They're the leaders of the school and stuff. Or I said, I could be in that group and I'm going to have to work my way up to be where I want to be, which I always had a high opinion that I thought I could be the leader of everything that I was a part of. Or I could be the leader of this group over here that, I don't know, they're going anywhere in life. Yeah. But they're immediately, I know I could walk into this kind of group and be, and a lot of them will take that easy road. So how do we lead them to make these decisions of choosing joy, of, doing it?
Yeah. I mean, it starts with honesty with yourself. Now, I say all of this, right, as a 36-year-old who has pushed through a lot of trauma and walked in the basement of rock bottom for weeks and months at a time. I don't say this all with the maturity that I had, lack of maturity that I had in high school. Like I said, I just wanted to be invited to things. It's getting to the core of, they have to be honest with themselves. If you know that you have really ugly recordings, what are you going to do about it? Because I can show up for you every day and be like, hey, that thing that person said about you was a lie. That one comment that one person made to you about the size of your body, about the things that you eat, about your religion, about the way that you vote, about the way that you speak, about where you're from, about your socioeconomic class, whatever it is, that one comment that was made to you that has become your recording, it was a lie. And I can say it over and over and over and over and over. It's not true. It's not true. You are worthy. But until you believe it, nothing will change. So it comes down to self-discovery, maybe?
Realization?
Maybe. That sounds good. That sounds like a good one. That sounds like a good word. We'll go with that. You have to make that decision. You have to decide when enough is enough. And you were 100% right, James, that it is hard. And
it is.
I mean, keep in mind, our brains are not fully formed until we are 26 years old. Like, our brains as adults and as human beings are not actually fully formed until we are 26. So we are talking about the ages I mostly speak to are like 13 to 18. Their school and what they experience at school and in their home, that is their whole world. That is all that their brains that are not fully formed can handle, is what's right in front of them and what they are experiencing. So I'm not naive enough to say like, oh, this is super easy and
Yeah.
everything. But it does start with them, and it starts with them making the decision. But then you got to follow it up with, okay, once you make the decision, no, I want more than this. I am deserving of love. I am deserving of respect. There are people out there who are going to treat me well. Then you have to stand by that and watch. And this is something I say in my talk, because that's when you're going to find out who your real friends are. Because no man is an island. While, yes, you have to fight for your own worth and your own value, you also then have to be very, very picky on what I call the army that you encircle yourself with. Who the people who you decide to share those feelings with, that you decide to share those insecurities with, because not everybody who is in your circle is in your corner, and not everybody who stands with you will stand for you when you are not around. That's a Trent Shelton quote. You are going to find out so quickly as soon as you make that decision of like, no, I don't want to hate myself anymore. I don't want to,
Yeah.
I want to dream bigger. Your friends are either going to support you or they're going to make fun of you. And if they take the route of making fun of you, those are not your friends. I say in my talk, I say, you're going to realize who your real friends are. And I'm not talking about what we call just kidding friends. The ones who will look at you and say something like, my God, that's so much food. Are you going to eat all of that, you fat pig? I'm just kidding. Like those friends who follow things up with, I'm just kidding. And they think it's funny because we always laugh. But the reason we laugh is because it's so much easier to laugh along with you than to cause confrontation and say, hey, that's not cool. Don't call me that. Because then that makes you uncomfortable. And I'm worried about protecting your feelings, even though you just called me a name, or you just took something about my character and used it as the butt of a joke. So I say, you got to get ready, because you're going to realize really quickly who your real friends are. And those people who are using you as the butt of a joke, those aren't your friends.
Yeah.
Those aren't your friends. I do not let my friends know. You do not call yourself names in front of me. You don't say, God, I'm such an idiot. You don't say, oh, I look so ugly today, because I'll call you out so fast. I'll be like, ooh, please don't talk about my friend James like that. That's my friend James you're talking about? Like, my friend James is like really good people, and he's handsome and he's smart and he's funny. He's not ugly. He's not trash. Please don't talk about my friend like that. Because I
You
don't
nailed
want
me perfectly. That's a good. Wow.
because I don't want my friends to allow me to talk about me like that.
Yeah.
So, and I have walked away from friendships. There was one friendship in particular that my friend, former friend, I mean, we're still cordial, but he would always call himself names. And I knew it was coming from a place of hurt, and I knew it was coming from a place of insecurity, but I can only speak truth to you for so long. I can only say, please don't call my friend that, before it's like, you know what? I'm going to walk away, because if you're calling yourself things like that, you might start calling me stuff like that. And I'm just not gonna, I will be here for you. I love you. I will champion for you. But I have to surround myself with people who want more than that, if that makes any sense. Sorry, just went off on a really big tangent.
No, and it led me to this as I was thinking through this. So it's like, the young people that we hear this, they may catch a fire, and it might, spark something in them, but we got to have something to sustain that flame and fire. And that's where it comes back to what you alluded to earlier, their parents. So let's speak to them. How can they help? Just give them something to start. I always like to think about, give me something my first step. Tell me what my first step is. You don't have to give me the whole plan. Just give me a first step. And then when I say I've mastered that, then I'll try to find what step 2 is. So how can they help their young people find this joy, find this stuff? Just trying to do this, because as a parent of 3, I'm going to tell you, it's not easy.
No.
It is not easy. You get exasperated as you try all these different methods. What works with this kid didn't work with that kid. What works over here? What worked with this kid today doesn't work next year. What just happened? I don't know what happened.
So here's the thing. I am not a parent. I don't have any kids. I am happily married, but I don't have any kids. So this is a tough one for me, because you're completely right that every kid is different.
Mm-hmm.
My very best friend, she's been my best friend since my sophomore year of high school, has 4 beautiful children. beautiful babies. Her oldest is turning 10 in December. Her youngest is 6 months. And they are all so different. I mean, her oldest is angel saint dream child. Her second child is an anarchist. Is like, well, you told me not to do this for very good reason. So I'm going to double down and do it twice as hard. Like, so to the parents who are listening to this, I am going to say all of this and I ask you to show me grace because, again, I am not a parent. This is a hard question because I am not a parent. I mean, one of the things would be talk to your kids, listen to your kids. But see, I say that and then some parents are like, but I do. And they say nothing and they want nothing to do with me. And
well, there's a difference between talking to them and listening to them.
yes.
And I'm glad you said both of that because I wrote that down as you were saying it. I was like, parents are really good at maybe not even talking to them, certainly not talking with them. Yeah. More about talking at them is what they are good at. Very good. Every parent I know is very good at talking at their kid.
Yeah.
But talking with them, that implies that reciprocal relationship and a lot of listening skills.
Yeah. I would also say taking interest in the things that they take interest in, which, I mean, my mom, so I was raised by a single mom and my mom was very involved. She had to be in my world, in what I did. I did a lot of musical theater. I did dance. I did track. I was so bad at track. I came in last every single time. They called it the Kate Shuffle because I didn't even really run. I just kind of shuffled my feet. But she was at every track meet. And I knew my mom was safe to talk to, even if it meant getting in trouble. This is what I was going to say. And this is hard. And I say this to a lot of advisors when I speak to advisors. Sometimes you got to let your kids fail.
Yes.
You can't always save them from the repercussions of a punishment or the repercussions of a decision. And it sucks. I know when I speak to some advisors, when I go and I speak at youth conferences, and one of the hardest things for us to do as adults is watching a situation that we know is going to end poorly. Like, this is not going to end well. I had one advisor say they had planned an ice cream social for the school, right? 5 minutes till the advisor's looking around. She goes, there's no bowls. They didn't have any bowls for the ice cream social. They had the ice cream. They had the spoons. They had the scoopers. There were no bowls. And she had to let them fail. She had to let them figure it out. She said it was one of the hardest things I ever did because I knew I was watching the train wreck happen. And as parents, I am not a parent, but I imagine that it's really hard to watch your kids make mistakes and then to follow through with punishments and have to follow through. But you have to, because as soon as you don't, they learn, oh, well, there's no consequences to my actions and I can do whatever I want. And that's how we get into places that we are now.
So, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole too much, but you're so correct on letting them fail. And I think a lot of it has to do with when they are, even before the age that we're dealing with, when they are elementary or even preschool type of age, that younger age, that we don't want any harm to come to them. They're right. So precious. They're so innocent. They're so vulnerable. I need to protect them from the big bad world. Where in my generation, it wasn't that they were coarse or harsh. It's just that they didn't think about those things. They were like, go out and play. And you kind of learned when to fail, what to do. The number of times that I probably should have been in the hospital for things today, parents would like me rushing a kid to the hospital. And I am confident I had multiple concussions growing up, looking back, what would be classified as concussions that, my dad was like, well, you look all right to me. Come on, let's go. And, out of all those times, probably only once, and I know only once that, it ended up being something severe for me enough to go to the hospital. But all that to say is that we don't give them an opportunity to fail early when the failures will be relatively easy to overcome. So that when they get to that late high school, college, or even post-college age, and they're starting to fail and the consequences are bigger, they don't have the experience and the skills to see, hey, there's a cliff over here. I'm getting mighty close to it. I need to step away.
And I'm even talking everything you said, 100%, even the small decisions. even ones that may not end in a concussion, but may end in disappointment or may end
Yes.
in a little bit of shame. I can remember, God, I was probably like 7, maybe 6, 7, and there was a girl down the street. I don't even remember her name now. Stacy, maybe? I don't even remember her name. And she talked me into trading my Polly Pocket, which, by the way, in the early 90s was like golden. I traded my Polly Pocket for a Ken doll. I had several Ken dolls. I only had one Polly Pocket. And she talked me into trading. And I cried and I cried and I cried. And my mom said, "Yeah, it hurts, doesn't it? Sometimes we make decisions that we regret." And I begged her to call to get my Polly Pocket back. And she said, "You made that choice. You have to live. We have to remember that our choices have consequences." And I've never forgotten that whenever it came to making big choices, I would be like, okay, wait, I need to think this through. How many Polly Pockets do I have in this moment? So it's not even just like the colossally big failures, it's even those little failures and
Yeah.
how, but then following up as a parent, not with shame, not with guilt, but with, man, like with empathy and with, yeah, this really sucks. And we're going to have to walk through the repercussions of this, but you're
See,
not
that's
a
the
bad person. You made a mistake. You are not a mistake.
See, that's the Ziegler quote there that
Mhm.
failure is an event, not a person.
Yep.
And that's the part that my generation's parents missed. They were very good at letting us fail on these little things and taking responsibility for your failure very, very early on. They were not very good is that follow up. Okay, what did you learn from this? How are you going to be better than this? So you either had to learn it on your own, and luckily life was not amplified as much. So we had that bandwidth in our lives to figure it out, to kind of have some self realizations and self reflection to say, hey, that was dumb. I probably are not trading. I don't need to trust that person. They're slick.
Well,
I need to be a little bit better than this. But
you have to also remember that our generations didn't have cameras in our back pockets.
no, we didn't.
Our generations, like some of the stuff that we did in the 90s, thank God, thank God we didn't have video evidence of it. It was now they are these teens who are just trying to fix, they don't get to mess up the way that we messed up.
Right.
It's caught on video.
Yep.
It's on the internet forever. And a lot of times I am finding that they have things like Snapchat where it's gone. It's not gone. It might be sort of gone. It might seem like it's gone. But that picture that you took, that phrase that you said, that racial slur that you used, those things don't go away. And we are watching in real time through celebrities and politicians where all of a sudden somebody finds one tweet or one post or whatever that a politician made 25 years ago, 20 years ago. One tweet before they figured out their lives and came to Jesus or came to the reckoning that made them the good person that they are, whatever. And that one tweet ruins them. We didn't have that when we were kids. We had handwritten notes. We didn't have texting, which is partly why my heart hurts for this generation, because they don't get to mess up the way that we did, which sounds so like, oh God, in my day.
I know. But there's a lot, we all say that. We all say, we're not going to say like in my day kind of stuff. But every generation says that. And it's just part of progress. I mean,
yeah,
it's just the way things are going. What's happening now, and we've talked about this, is that things just change so much quicker.
Yeah.
So much more amplification of what's going on and how our views are. And, there's even talk now, generations typically, the way that we define generations for the last several decades has been around about a 15-year span.
Okay.
That's about right. If you look at most of the math on generation, that's about what they are. And they're defined really by cultural changes, major cultural changes that have them view the world a little bit differently. What affected the way that you looked at the world? Was it technology? Was it the way you were receiving information?
Right.
Was it an event that caused your life to change, or a combination of those things?
Yeah.
But if we could study farther back, we would realize that there was not a lot of difference between someone in some generations, in some eras, over a 50, 60-year period, how they viewed the world was not different than what,
Right.
because there wasn't these things. So,
Right.
uh,
Yeah.
I really love this. I'm helping them find their worth, and I really love, being able to show them grace and helping them find joy. I love that aspect of it. I love it helping them to leading them to find that joy in that moment. Because
Yeah.
it related back to me when I was in college during a spot where I hit my lowest point. I found a book that said, you got to find joy, or something like that. And it just kind of revolutionized the whole way I looked at things, and that I had to find the joy in this, and I had to, define what was going on in this. So that really spoke to me. So I really appreciate that
Yeah.
aspect.
Yeah.
So how can our audience get in touch with you and find out more about you and connect with you?
Yeah. So I am on all social media platforms. I mostly spend the most time on Instagram at Kate Garnes Live, KateGarneslive. Or you can check out my website, kategarnes.com. On there, you can see all speaking, DJing, all of the things. I'm happy to connect with anybody. Like I said, am just so passionate about trying to navigate these waters of this world that we live in as a teenager, trying to navigate who you are, how to figure out who you are in a safe way when you are surrounded by social media and other teens trying to figure out who they are, who are trying to tell you what is cool, what is not cool, and that it's okay to mess up and it's okay to try on different hats, and it's okay to not be okay sometimes. And sometimes that's when we find our biggest strength, is when we hit our lowest spot, to figure out how strong we are to stand up at the basement of rock bottom. My heart, like people ask me, they're like, "You want to speak to teenagers?" Like, that's terrifying. And I'm which makes me laugh, because if you think about it in theory, yeah, that is really, really scary. But I know that I was given a message on purpose, and I know that I'm just so passionate because I was that lost kid. I was the kid that was so joyful. I was so excited about life all the time, and I got made fun of relentlessly for it. I was the kid who loved show choir. We had competitive show choir in Missouri and all across the Midwest. And I was bullied relentlessly by my own choir. So I went out and made friends in other choirs. I tried hard to stay true to who I was, even though who I was used as the butt of a joke a lot. I was always really small. So I was put in trash cans by the senior boys because they thought it was funny to put the little freshman or the little sophomore into trash cans. I was locked in band lockers because I could
There's a
fit.
lot of similarities. I got tossed in a dumpster as a freshman by the
Yeah.
senior boys because I was like 5 foot nothing. I mean,
Yep.
and even when I did have a growth spurt, it stopped well below what my aspirations were.
Yeah. I remember in middle school. I went to a private middle school before I went to the public high school. And this is still something that bothers me. There was one kid, his name was Grant. I have never been able to find him because he has a very generic name. And he was bullied so badly. And I want so much to be able to find him and tell him, I'm so sorry. I have tried so many times to find this guy. He's a ghost, but because he didn't deserve that. He didn't deserve how people treated him. And my heart, I don't want another Grant Matthews to have to go through what he went through. That's why I want kids, because the thing was, it wasn't about him. It was about the kids who were bullying him and their own insecurity and their own hate of themselves. And he was just the target. And I don't want any other kids to go through what he went through. If I can emotionally touch those insecurities in teens and can help them heal that, then they won't want to point their fingers and call people names. Then they won't laugh when someone does something foolish. They'll instead show empathy and help them. That's why I do what I do, is because I not only was bullied, but I watched people do it. And my heart still hurts. I've still tried to find this guy just to say, I am so sorry, you didn't deserve that. So, yeah.
Again, there are so many things and similarities and parallels between your experiences and mine.
Yeah.
It has got me excited about this. So thank you, Kate, for being with us today and
Absolutely.
sharing your story and diving into this. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Me
For
too.
those of you who are listening, look, if you want to find how to connect with her, go to the show notes. If you're listening on an app, you know where to go. Go to your platform and you'll see the notes there. If you're watching on YouTube, just look straight down and hit the more button and you'll find all the links and stuff there. And do us three things. Look, this is what Kate and I would love for you to do. Number one, comment on this podcast and like it. Share and like it. That's 1 and 2 because we need that kind of stuff to promote it. But the third one is the most important. If you hung around for 45 minutes plus, you must have found some great value in what you're listening to. You must have been engaged in this, or you left it on by mistake. Either way, either way, you are here. And we ask you to share it because there is someone who doesn't know about this episode that needs to hear this episode, that it can help spark a change in their life. So please share this with your audience, with your friends. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, audience. And we'll be back real soon with another episode of the Generation Youth Podcast.